Question 2. During a sale, a laptop was sold for $1,072 after a 20% discount. How much was the usual price of the laptop? So that means the discounted price in percentage is basically equal to 100 minus 20, which is 80%. And the discounted price in dollars is equal to 1,072. So with that said, that means 80% is equal to $1,072. Then what is 100%? Basically 1072 divided by 80 times 100. This will give us $1,340. So that's the answer. Question 3. A fruit seller packed 860 apples in bags of 4 for sale. The price of each bag of apples was $7.80. How much money did the fruit seller collect after selling all the bags of apples? So we know that one bag is equal to 4 apples. So total number of bags is basically equal to 860 divided by 4, and this will give us 215. So one bag is also equal to $7.80. So total money will then be equal to 215 times $7.80, and this will give us $1,677. And that's the answer. Question 4. Figure 1 is a triangle with a perimeter of 39 centimeters. Each side of the triangle has a different design. Figure 2 is made up of 5 such triangles. The perimeter of figure 2 is 87 centimeters. What is the length of ST in figure 1? So we know in figure 1, it is 39 centimeters. I'm going to put here as perimeter. And then for figure 2, the perimeter is 87 centimeters. So what we're looking for is this line over here. So what I did here was I put ST over here, which is very bold, to be red. And then if you were to look closely, the designs, right, each side has its own shape. So the crescent moon is in green, and then the sun is in blue. So for perimeter, you need to understand is the outline of the figure. So for figure 2, there's only one ST, but there is 1, 2, and 3 blue lines, or the sun, and then the 1, 2, and 3 moon. So we're going to use these short forms, right? Let green line at moon be M, let red line be heart be H, and let blue line at sun be S. So that means M plus H plus S is 39. And then for the parameter over here, 87, right? We have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 moons plus 1 heart plus 3 suns. Okay. And this will give us 87. So with that, we can just have figure 2 minus figure 1, which in this case, which is equal to 87 minus 39. And if we were to just like cross it out, so for example, we just cross, okay, not cross, but I will just remove or make this not able to see. So figure 2 minus figure 1 is 87 minus 39, and this will give us 48. And figure 2 minus figure 1 in terms of like how this looks like is basically equal to 2m minus 2s, right? So if you were to just cancel it out, then you see there is 2 moons and 2 crescents. 2 moons and 2 suns in this case, right? 2 moons plus 2 suns. All right, so we know that 2m plus 2s, or 2 moons plus 2s, is equal to, in this case, 48. Then we can divide them by 2. So 1m plus 1s is equal to 48 divided by 2. This will give us 24. So since we know m plus h plus s is equal to 39, so basically if I were to show it like this, right? So this 2m plus s is equal to 24. And then st, which is the red line, the hearts one, is what we're looking for. If we were to just minus this 2 off, like this, so that means h will just be equal to 39 minus 24, and this will give us 15 centimeters. So ST over here is 15 centimeters. Question 5a. A shop sells only 3 types of toys. The table shows the number of each type of toy sold in the shop. Find the total number of toys sold by the shop in terms of P. So the total number of toys will be equal to P plus 2P plus 8 plus 45. This will give us 3P plus 53. So the answer is 3P plus 53. Question 5, Part B. A shop sells only 3 types of toys. The table shows the number of each type of toy sold in the shop. The shop sold a total of 140 toys. How many toy robots did the shop sell? So total toys in terms of P is basically P plus 2P plus 8 plus 45. So give us 3P plus 53. So know that the total toys is equal to 140. So that means 3P plus 53 plus is equal to 140 minus 53, or 3P equal to 140 minus 53 is equal to 87. So 1P will be equal to 87 divided by 3. This will give us 29. So it's asking for toy robots, and toy robots is 1P. In this case, is the answer, which is 29. Question 6a. The table below shows the number of visitors to a zoo from Thursday to Sunday. The number of visitors to the zoo on Sunday is not shown. The number of visitors to the zoo on a Sunday increased by 15% when compared to Saturday. What was the number of visitors to the zoo on Sunday? So when this statement says Sunday increased by 15% when compared to Saturday, so that means Saturday is 100%, and then Sunday is 100 plus 15 is 115%. So what is Saturday? Saturday is 3,580. So Sunday is basically 3,580 times 115%, and this will give us 4,117. So question 6b. The table below shows the number of visitors to a zoo from Thursday to Saturday. The number of visitors to the zoo on a Sunday is not shown. What was the percentage decrease in the number of visitors to the zoo on a Friday compared to Thursday? Round your answer to 1 decimal place. So percentage decrease from Thursday to Friday. We basically need to find the difference divided by Thursday times 100%. So what's the difference? Essentially it's 3100 minus 2690. And this will give us 410. So now we can get the percentage decrease, which is the difference is 410 divided by Thursday 3100 times 100%. And this will give us a very, very long number. So we want to run around our answer to 1 decimal place, which in this case is 13.2%. There you go. So the answer is 13.2. Question 7. In the figure, ABC is an isosceles triangle. AB is equal to BC. BDEC is a parallelogram. EFE is a straight line. CBD is equal to 142 degrees. Find angle FED. So if you were to look at the angle that we're looking for, which is this angle, FED in red, then it is part of the parallelogram. So in order for us to get angle FED, what we need to do is we need to have FED minus this other angle, which I'm going to highlight in purple like this. So can you guess what this purple angle is? If you guess this angle, which is angle CED, is 142 degrees, then you're right. So this is 142, which means that angle FED is basically 142 minus CEF. So 142 because opposite angle in parallelogram are the same. So then, how do we get this angle in green? CEF. So angle in green for CEF, basically it's part of this triangle in green ACE. So to get the angle CEF, which is in green, we just need to have CEF is 180 minus 53 over here, and then minus this other angle, which I'm going to highlight in orange, what we see over here. So how do we get this orange angle ACE? So to get ACE, there are two angles that we need to get, which is basically angle ACB and BCE, which I'm going to highlight in blue and also in pink. So let's find the angle ACB. So ACB, which is in blue over here, which is part of this triangle ABC. And we know ABC is an isosceles triangle. So to get ACB, we will just have 180 minus 48, is this part, divided by 2. Because it is an isosceles triangle, as what you see over here. And this will give us 66. The next one is we want to find this pink angle. So to find this pink angle, it is part of the parallelogram. So that means we can just have the pink angle, which is BCE is 180 minus 42, and this will give us 38 degrees. That's what you see over here. So now we know the two angles to get the orange angle. Then we can just add them. So that means we add the blue angle and the pink angle to get the orange angle. So ACE, which is the orange, plus which is ACB blue plus BCE pink to get 104 degrees. Since we know how to get this, then we work backwards, which will then get our triangle over here, ACE, to get this green angle. So this green angle is CEF, which will then just be 180 minus 53 over here, minus 104 to get the angle CEF, which is 23, which is over here. Since we know this green angle over here, and we know this purple angle over here, then we can get the angle that we're looking for, which is angle FED, which in this case will be 142 minus 23, and this will give us 119 degrees. That's your answer, 119. Question 8. A baker sold some boxes of tarts and cookies. Each box of tarts cost $3.10 and each box of cookies cost $5.50. The baker sold twice as many boxes of tarts as boxes of cookies. He earned a total of $1,439.10. How many boxes of tarts did he sell? So from this statement, the baker sold twice as many boxes of tarts as boxes. So this is a grouping concept. So in one group, we have, in this case, two tarts or two tart boxes plus one cookie box. So with that said, we want to find the one group cost, which will be equal to 2 times 3.10 plus 5.50, and this will give us $11.70. Since the total is $1,439.10, then number of groups then be total divided by one group cost, which equal to 1439.1 divided by 11.7, and this will give us 123 groups. So we want the total tart boxes. Since one group has two tart boxes, that means the total tart box is 123 times 2, and this will give us 246 tart boxes. Okay, there you go. Question 9a. The first four figures of a pattern are shown below. The table below shows the number of dots and lines used for each figure. A figure in the pattern has 232 lines. What is the figure number? So from the image over here, this is a bit hard to see by 16. So figure 1 has 4, figure 2 has 8, figure 3 has 12, and figure 4 has 16. So that means what is the figure when we have 232 lines? I think it's pretty straightforward, right? So it's just multiples of 4, right? So to get this figure, we will just have 232 divided by 4, and this will give us 58. Okay, so pretty straightforward, 58. Question 9, part B. The first four figures of a pattern are shown below. The table below shows the number of dots and lines used for each figure. Find the total number of dots in figure 7T. So from the image over here, we have figure 1 have 4 dots, figure 2 7, 3 10, figure 4 is 13. How many 70 dots? So this is what we call adding pattern, because if you were to look here, we have figure 2 as the 4 plus 3, and then figure 3 is just plus 3 from the previous one, and figure 4 is just plus 3 from the previous one. So essentially, we usually just have the first, I would say what they call this, number, and then we just have 3 and 3 and 3. So with that, we actually can figure out the pattern. So the pattern kind of looks something like this, where we have 3 times 1, 3 times 2, and 3 times 3. So we are very close to what we needed to get. So that means for this over here, we have one more step, which is basically how do we get this 1, 2, 3, which essentially is 1 minus 1, 2 minus 1, 3 minus 1, and 4 minus 1. Okay, so the figure number minus 1, which essentially will just be 3 times 0, 3 times 1, 3 times 2, and 3 times 3. So for figure 70, we just use the same thing over here. So which is basically 4 times 3 is so 4 plus 3 times 4, and then bracket 70 minus 1, and this will give us 211 dots. That's what we see over here. There we go. So that's the answer, 211. Question 11a. The figure shows 2 stacks of identical paper cups. There are 4 paper cups in the shorter stack and 6 paper cups in the taller stack. The height of the shorter stack is 21 centimeters and the height of the taller stack is 25 centimeters. Find the height of the paper cup. So what we're looking for, if we were to zoom it in, is the height of the paper cup as what we see over here. So the thing is, in a way, we have these common paper cups as what we see. And then there are these little small, I would say, edges, right? So we have one edge. We put this in red. So 1, 2, and 3 edge. And then we have, for figure 2, 5 edges over here. So you can see that there is 3 edge plus 1 cup is 21, and 5 edge plus 1 cup is 25. So let's write that down. So 3 edge plus 1 cup is equal to 21 centimeters. And then 5 edge plus 1 cup is 25. So if you were to minus both, as what we see over here, right? So 25 minus 21 of 2 are 4. Okay, this will give us 4 centimeters. That's what I see over here. So that means 2h over here is equal to 4 centimeters. 1h is equal to 4 divided by 2. This will give us 2 centimeters. So with that said, 3h plus 1 cup. So 1 cup is basically 3h or 21, sorry, minus 3h. And then we swap the 3h with the 20 with 2 cm, which is basically 3 times 2. This will give us 15 centimeters. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer, 15. So question 11b. The figure shows 2 stacks of identical paper cups. There are 4 paper cups in the shorter stack and 6 paper cups in the taller stack. The height of the shorter stack is 21 centimeters and the height of the taller stack is 25 centimeters. Mr. Song wants to pack the paper cups as a single stack in a box of 50 centimeters. So what is the most number of paper cups she can pack in the box? So basically I label 1 cup. We need to get the age right. So, or the I would say stacked height. So 3 edges, 5 edges. If we were to put them into an equation, we will write down 5h plus 1 cup is 25 centimeters. And the 3h plus 1 cup is 21 centimeters. Then if we minus both the equation, if I were to visualize this, that means 25 minus 21 will be 4 centimeters. And this will give us 2 h's. That's what I see over here. So that means 2h is 4 centimeters, 1h is 2 centimeters. Then we want to find the, I would say the height of the cup. Basically, we just swap in the h. So 3h plus 1 cup is 21. 1 cup would then be 21 minus 3h, which is equal to 15 centimeters. So now to get this box of 50 centimeters, so 1 cup is equal to 15 centimeters. So the box height is 50. So if we add 1 cup, then the remaining then be equal to 50 minus 15. This will give us 35 centimeters. So now we are left with 35 centimeters. This 35 centimeters is where we divide the edge. So number of cups equal to 35 divided by 2, and this will give us 17.5. And we need to round down to 17. So we don't round up because we can't store half a cup. So total cups will then be equal to 17 plus 1, which will give us 18. So there you go. So you can fit 18 cups inside here. Question 12a. At first, 1/11 of the tank was filled with water. A tap was turned on at 10:00 for more water to flow into the tank. It was turned off at 10:20. The graph shows the volume of water in tank over the 20 minutes. How many liters of water from the tap has flowed in 1 minute? So if we were to zoom it in, we want to know the gaps. So we have the gaps over here. So we have 1 and 2 gaps. 2 gaps is equal to 50 liters. Then 1 gap will then be equal to 50 divided by 2, and this will give us 25 liters. So we want to calculate volume at 10:00. In this case, it is 75 liters, right? 50 plus 1 more gap is 75 liters. Then volume at 10:20 is equal to 225 liters. So the difference will then be equal to 25 minus 75, and this will give us 150 liters. So the rate of water in 1 minute, we also know that, or not say difference, but water added from 10 to 10:20, it is 150 liters. Duration of water load is equal to 10:20 minus 10, give us 20 minutes. So rate of water in 1 minute is basically 150 divided by 20, and this will give us 7.5 liters per minute. So the answer is 7.5 liters. So part B, at 10:30, the tap was turned on again to fill the tank to the brim at the same rates as before. At what time will the tank be filled with water? So we know the rate is 7.5 liters per minute. So at the same time, 1/11 of the tank was filled. So we know what is the filled, right? Which is 1/11th tank is basically 75 liters. Yes, it's a start at 10. So that means the total tank, right? The total capacity of the tank is basically 75 times 11, and this will give us 825 liters. So the tank volume of water at 10:20, I think we already know, right? Which is 225. Okay. So remaining will then be equal to 825 minus 225, and this will give us 600 liters. To find the duration to fill the water file. Fill the water, we need to have the total or remaining divided by the rate. In this case is 600 divided by 7.5, and this will give us 80 minutes. Since it starts at 10:30, so 80 minutes after 10:30, or the time the tank will be filled to the brim with water, will be equal to 10:30 plus 80 minutes, and this will give us 11:50. Right, there you go. So the answer is 11:50. Question 13a. Susan designed the logo as shown. The logo is made up of 3 identical small quarter circles, 3 identical big quarter circles, and 2 different squares. O is the center of the small and big quarter circles. The radius of the small quarter circle is 10 centimeters. What is the radius of the big quarter circle? So if we were to zoom in, since we know these are the equal quarter circles, that means this is also 10 centimeters. Since we also know that this is 32 centimeters at the bottom over here, then we just need to find this remaining part over here. So to get this remaining part, we will just have 32 centimeters minus 10 and 10, and then we divide it by 2 to get these two distances. Then we can add the 10 centimeters to get the radius of the big quarter circle. That's what you see over here. So to get the, I would say, border, okay, in yellow, we will just have 32 minus 10 minus 10, and this whole thing divided by 2. And this will give us 6. Actually, there's a simpler way. Because this is the same quarter circle, so you don't need this anymore. You can just divide this by 2. Since these are the same quarter circles, so we can just say radius or 2 radius, big quarter circle is equal to 32. Then 1 radius of big quarter circle. So 2 radius is actually diameter lah. But for this explanation, just say that. So 32 divided by 2, this will give us 16 centimeters. So that's the answer, 16. Question 13 part B, Susan designed the logo as shown. The logo is made up of 3 identical small quarter circles, 3 identical big quarter circles, and 2 different squares. O is the center of the small and big quarter circles. The radius of the small quarter circle is 10 centimeters. Take pi as 3.14. What is the total area of the logo that is shaded? To get the shaded area, there's 2 parts. The first part is basically this 3/4 circle. So basically you just get this whole big 3/4 circle minus the small quarter circle over here to get this shaded part as what you see over here. Right? So this shaded part. Okay, then the next part is to get this whole big square over here. And then we minus it with the small little square. And then we can get the shaded part. Then you total the shaded part. And then you got the total area. So let's do the square because it's pretty straightforward. So to get the square sides, which in this case is this part over here. So since these 2 parts is 2 of the big identical small quarter circles, that means one side or the radius is 32 divided by 2, and this will give us 16 centimeters. That's what you see over here. Since this is 16, this is also 16. So we can find the big square area, which is 16 times 16, and this will give us 256. Then we want to get the small square area, which is this part over here. So how do we get a small square? Since this over here is 10 centimeters and they are the same quarter circle or small quarter circle, that means this part over here is 10 and 10. So the small square area is just 10 times 10, and this will give us 100. So now we want to get the 3/4 circle. So the 3/4 circle, so 3/4 circle area, or I might say the big circle area, is basically 3/4 of the area, which is times pi times radius times radius. So since we know the radius of the big quarter circle, 3/4 circle is 16, then we can do that. So 3/4 times pi, which is 3.14, times 16 times 16, and this will give us 602.88. Then we can get the 3/4 small circle area, which in this case is 10. So that means the 3/4 small circle area is equal to 235.5. So the total shaded area is the big 3/4 circle minus the small 3/4 circle plus the big square minus small square. In this case, the big 3/4 circle is 602.88 minus 2355.5, and then plus the big square, which is 256, and then we minus 100, and this will give us 523.38 centimeter square. So there you go. So that's the answer. Question 14a. A and B are 2 rectangular containers. The base area of container A is twice the base area of container B. Container A was filled with water to a height of 10 centimeters and container B was empty. What was the volume of water in container A? So pretty straightforward. If you were to look at container A, then you can just get the volume. So container A volume will be length times breadth times height, which will then be equal to 36 times 12 times 10. And this will give us 4,320 centimeter cube, which also translates to 4,320 milliliters. this case over here. All right. Question 14, part B. A and B are two rectangular containers. The base area of container A is twice the base area of container B. Container A was filled with water to a height of 10 centimeters and container B was empty. All the water from container A was poured into container B without spilling. How much more water was needed to fill container B to the brim? So first we can get the container A volume, which in this case is length times breadth times height, and this will give us 4,320 milliliters. Then container A base area, which is length times breadth, and in this case it's basically 36 times 12, which would then be equal to 432 centimeters square. So for container B base area, we will just have to divide it by 2. So the base area of container is twice the base area of container B. So that means container B base area basically half of container A base area, which in this case is half times 432, and this will give us 216 centimeter square. So the total capacity for container container B is basically base area times height. Means we will have 216 times the height, which is 32, and this will give us 6,912. So volume needed to fill container B is basically the total capacity of container B minus the water that we have calculated earlier, which is this 4,320. And this will give us 2,592 milliliters. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. Question 15, part A. Mr. Lee and Mrs. Sim bought muffins at the price as shown below. Mr. Lee bought an equal number of chocolate muffins and vanilla muffins. He spent $24 more on the chocolate muffins. How many muffins did he buy altogether? So from this over here, we know that Mr. Lee bought an equal number of chocolate muffins and vanilla muffins. That means the concept is grouping. So we need to find the same number of chocolate and vanilla muffins. So first step is to find the lowest common multiple of muffins of 3 and 4, and this will give us 12. So that means for 3 chocolates is $5, then 12 chocolates will then be equal to 5 times 4. This will give us $20. For the vanilla muffins, so 4 vanilla is equal to $6. Then for 12 vanilla will then be equal to 6 times 3. This will give us $18. So one group in here has 12 chocolate plus 12 vanilla. Then with this, we can actually get one group difference in terms of the value. So one group difference is basically equal to 20 minus 18. And this will give us $2. Then from the question, he said that he spent $24 more on the chocolate. So that means total difference is equal to $24. Then we know the number of, the group difference for one, which is $2. So number of groups is basically having the total difference divided by one group difference, and this will give us 24 divided by 2, and this will give us 12. So how many muffins did he buy altogether? So one group is 12 chocolate and 12 vanilla, which is 24 muffins. So that means for 12 groups is equal to 12 times 24, and this will give us 288 muffins. There you go. So that's the answer. Question 15, part B. Mr. Lee and Mrs. Sim bought muffins at the price as shown below. Mrs. Sim spent an equal amount of money on the chocolate muffins and vanilla muffins. What fraction of the muffins she bought were chocolate? So this is a grouping concept. So first thing is we need to find the lowest common multiple of price, since Mrs. Sim spent equal amount on chocolate and vanilla. So lowest common multiple of price of 5 and 6, which is equal to $30. So if $5 gives us 3 chocolates, then $30 will give us 3 times 6, which give us 18 chocolate. Then for the vanilla, this is $6 equal to 4 vanilla. Then $30 will then give us 4 times 5 vanilla. And this will give us, 4 times 5, which is equal to 20 vanilla. Therefore, the total will then be equal to 18 plus 20, which is equal to 38. So fraction that is chocolate will then be equal to 18 out of 38. If we were to simplify it, it will be 9 over 19. There you go. So the answer is 9 over 19. So the thing is that this will work even if you were to put, for example, another common multiple, 60, right? So if you were to put 60, then it's just multiply 2 of 30, right? Which is this case, 36. Then if you were to put $60 for vanilla, then it would then be 40 vanilla in this case. So we have 40 vanilla and 36 chocolate for $60. Cost equal amount of money, right? So if we were to put it here, it's the same thing. The total would then be 40 plus 36, which is 76. Then from the fraction, how many is the chocolate? In this case is 36. And then the total is 76. The thing is, if we were to simplify it, it will be 18 out of 38 and 9 over 19. So it doesn't matter what's the price, it will always be the same fraction. So hopefully it makes sense. Question 16. Chloe spent 5/8 of her money on 3 identical books and 7 identical files. The cost of each book was 3 times the cost of each file. She bought some more files with 5/6 of her remaining money and had $4 left. How much did Chloe spend on the files together? So we want to find out how much total money she has. So we know that she spent 5/8 of her money. So that means the remaining money would then be equal to 1 minus 5 over 8 equal to 3 over 8. So, and the next statement says she bought some more files with 5/6 of her remaining money. So that means the money spent on the some more files is 5/6 of her remaining money. So we got the remaining money. And we will just have to multiply 5 over 6 times 3 over 8. And this will give us 5 over 16 of the money. So the thing is, we can calculate how much is left, which will have 1 minus 5 over 8, because she spent 5 over 8 on the 3 books and 7 files, and 5 over 16 on some more files. So what she is left with is 1 over 16. And do we know how much she is left with? Yes, from the question, it says here she has $4 left, or had $4 left. So that means 1 over 16 of the money is $4. Now we can calculate the total amount of money, which is basically 16 over 16. So you just multiply 16 by 4 and this will give us $64. Then we knew that the money spent on some more files is 5 over 16 of the money. So we calculate this first because there are 2 parts on how much is spent on the files. So this is like the later part, right? So 5 over 16, she spent $20, right? 1 over 16 is 4. 5 is just 5 times 4, and this will give us $20. Then we need to calculate how much she spent on the files at first. So this means we need to calculate the 3 books plus 7 files. And the thing is that we know that she spent 5/8 of her money. So all the 5/8 of the total money, which in this case is 5/8 times 64, which is the total money, which is what we have calculated. And she spent $40. But the thing is that this $40 is on 3 books and 7 files. So we kind of have to know how much is one book or one file cost. Luckily, from the question, it says the cost of each book was 3 times the cost of each file. So that means One book is equal to 3 files. So 5/8 of the money, how many total files do we get? Basically, it's 3 books plus 7 files. So 3 books, 1 book is 3 files. Total will be 16 files. Do we know the amount of money spent on the 16 files equivalent? Yes, it is $40 as what we have calculated over here. So with that said, we can calculate 7 files, which is basically 40 divided by 16 times 7, and this will give us $17.50. The total spent on files will then be equal to $17.50 plus $20 of what we have spent on some of files, and the answer to this question is $37.50. Question 17, Part A. 3 boys, Lionel, Michael, and Nate, had the same number of coins. Lionel and Michael each had a mix of 50-cent and 10-cent coins. Lionel had 10 10-cent coins, while Michael had 15 10-cent coins. Nate had only 50-cent coins. How much more money did Lionel have than Michael? So for this question, we're going to use this. I'm going to assume that all the boys have 20 coins. So that means if you were to calculate Lionel first, we will have Lionel 10-cent coins, which will be 10. And then Lionel 50-cent coins will be, in this case, the total 20 minus 10, and this will give us 10. So for the Lionel, total will be 10 10-cent coins plus 10 plus 50-cent coins. And this will give us 600 cents. So next is we want to calculate for Michael. So Michael from the question has 15 10-cent coins. That means for the 50-cent coins, we have our assumed total 20 minus 15, which will give us 5. That means the total will be 15 times 10 plus 5 times 50 will be 400. So the question asks, how much more money did Lionel have than Michael? So that means the difference will then be equal to Lionel total 600 minus 400. This will give us 200 cents in this case over here, right? Or you could say $2. So will this work if all the boys have a different number of coins rather than 20? Yes, it does. So let's assume that the 3 boys each has 30 coins. So that means for Lionel 10-cent coins will be the same, but Lionel 50-cent coins will be 30 minus 10, which is 20. And if we were to get the total, this will give us 1,100 cents. And then for Michael, same thing, he had 15 10-cent coins. For the 50-cent coins, the total, 30 minus 15, this will be 15. And when we get the total, we calculate it, and this will give us 900 cents. So how much more money did Lionel have than Michael? So the difference is 1,100 minus 900. And this will give us the same thing, 200 cents in this case over here. So is the difference the same no matter how many coins you put? Yes. So 200 cents and 200 cents. Therefore, the answer is 200 cents. Question 17, Part B. 3 boys, Lionel, Michael, and Nate, had the same number of coins. Lionel and Michael each had a mix of 50-cent and 10-cent coins. Lionel had 10 10-cent coins, while Michael had 15 10-cent coins. Nate had only 50-cent coins. Michael used all his 50-cent coins to buy some food. He then had $8 less in coins than Nate. How many 50-cent coins did Nate have? Alright, to solve this, we need to know how much Nate has. So from the question, he then had $8 less in coins than Nate. So that means Michael left is basically Nate's minus $8. So Nate is basically, or Nate's total in terms of value is equal to how much Michael is left plus $8. So once we know Nate's total, then the number of 50-cent coins Nate have is basically Nate's total divided by 50 cents. So with that said, we need to find Michael left. So Michael left will then be equal to, since he is only left with the 10-cent coins, which is basically 15 10-cent coins. So 15 times 10 cents, and this will give us 150 cents. So now we know what's Michael's left. The next thing is we can get Nate's total. which in this case would then be equal to 150 cents. So we want to convert 150 cents to dollars. So 150 cents equal to 150 divided by 100, which is dollars 1.50. So he is left with $1.50, which would then be the total of $9.50. So to get number of 50-cent coins Nate have, which is basically Nate's total, which is $9.50 divided by 50 cents. So 50 cents, if you were to convert to dollars, go to 50 divided by 100 is 0.50. So we just divide it by 50 and this 0.50 I mean, and this will give us 19 50-cent coins. And that's the answer.